Welcome into the Weekend Audible here on NkySportsBlog.com, our football podcast reviewing, recapping, and talking all about NKY high school football. I'm your host, Rick Broering, and this show here, we're looking at making it live and potentially taking callers and everything like that. But for now, it's just going to be a podcast format. You can email us at NkySportsBlog@gmail.com. And, of course, you can find us on Twitter. Just search at NkySportsBlog, and we will be more than happy to answer your questions on air. I'll even do a mailbag segment at the end of the show every week. If you want to send in questions for me, that's no problem. And again, we'd like to get it live and take callers on air, so we'll look into that as well. We will have guests. We'll also have a co-host from time to time, guest host, Ryan Succo will be back in the mix. You remember him from our 9th Region basketball podcast at the end of last basketball season. He'll be back in the mix when he gets done chasing the Louisville Bats, their Reds minor league affiliate. He's working for them right now, so when he's back from that, he'll be back on the podcast and helping us out. But let's jump right into things. We've got a lot to talk about from Week 0 action. Starting with the game I was at, I've got to talk about the Ryle Cooper game and the Travis Elliot show that was on Friday night. Travis Elliot sits out the entire first quarter, comes into the game, and ran like he was being controlled by a PS3 controller with one of those made-up players, the customized, make-your-own player features that you made a little bit too good. So he's built like a linebacker, faster than everybody else on the field, and you just rack up ridiculous stats and make all types of ridiculous plays with them. Kind of how Travis Elliot was Friday night against Cooper. Sits out the entire first quarter, comes in, and on his third touch he takes a screen pass a long way for a touchdown, has 5 touchdowns totals on the game, 173 yards rushing, an 85-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. We'll talk more about that, and I'll also tell you why we shouldn't discount the Jaguars of Cooper just yet, despite taking that 41-17 loss to the Ryle Raiders. You might be interested to hear a little bit about Cooper's program and the direction that Coach Randy Borges is taking them in. Elsewhere in Week 0, I want to talk about the biggest statement game, and that's the NewCath Thoroughbreds and their convincing win over Dixie, 42-13. And yes, before you say anything, I know Zeke Pike was not playing. But still, it's 2A versus 6A. Dixie's supposed to be pretty good this year. In fact, very good. Top 3, according to most polls. 42-13. Just think about that for a second. Brady Hightchew and the NewCath offense were unstoppable. Watch some of the video. You want to watch it, it's on NkySports.com. I've looked through the video a couple times now. Eddie Eviston did whatever he wanted on offense from a play calling standpoint. The head coach of NewCath just controlled that game from a play calling standpoint. His offense took whatever they wanted. What's this mean for Dixie? We'll talk about that a little bit later on as we get going here. And sticking with 6A, we've talked about Ryle, we've talked about Dixie. I want to talk about the rest of the district. This is going to be the district to watch this season. Who's going to pull away from the pack? I'll give you my thoughts on that. I'll give you my thoughts on where everybody stands right now in 6A, who may be slipping a little bit, and why it'll be the most exciting district this entire football season, and why you should keep an eye on that. We'll talk about that later as we get going on the show. Also dropping down to 4A, CovCath and Highlands. Both in action, both winners, both looked really good in Week 0. We know Highlands is the favorite to win this district. Has CovCath brought the rivalry back? Are they to that point yet where this is a great rivalry once again and the fans can get pumped about it? Because I know you fans. I know you CovCath fans. I know you Highlands fans. I know both of you want this game to be a big-time rivalry once again. We'll talk about whether CovCath has got there and also what each team's Week 0 performance meant and how important that will be going forward. So lots of stuff here on the board, and we'll also do a rundown from the NkySportsBlog scoreboard, talk about all the games from Week 0 action. As we continue, you're listening to the Weekend Audible here on NkySportsBlog.com.
QueenCityHigh.com is Cincinnati's premier high school sports website and a member of the Rivals.com network, the nation's most trusted recruiting service. Follow the best teams and players in the tri-state area and talk smack in the free message board, the 275 Loop. Sign up today for a free 30-day trial. Just use the promo code QCH30 and gain access to exclusive recruiting news, player videos, and feature articles. Don't get left on the sidelines. Get into the game now by visiting QueenCityHigh.com, the Tri-State's Rivals.com high school sports website.
And we're back here on the Weekend Audible on NkySportsBlog.com. I'm your host, Rick Roaring, and we're talking NKY football action from Week 0. And I want to go back and hit on that Ryle Cooper game that I opened up with. That's the game I attended. Ryle won 41-17 over the Cooper Jaguars. And Cooper, of course, dealing with life after Devontae Bradley, who's now at Thomas More, going to play for them this year. Saw him at the game, actually. He was on the sideline cheering his former teammates on. Looked good. Looked like he was in shape. Unfortunately for Cooper, he wasn't there to help him. And Travis Elliot, on the other hand, was there for Ryle. He showed up. He didn't play the entire first quarter. But once he got into the game, wow. So dominant. I mean, like I said before, it looked like a video game. And I'm talking like, the problem with Travis Elliot is that he's so fast, but at the same time, you know you can't arm tackle him. You're not going to be able to just run up and bring him down and wrap him up. So you're worried about catching him, first of all, but you have to give him a good hit, take out his legs, and drive through him to get him down. So it's really difficult, and he has such great vision to cut back, and that's one thing he's really added to his game over the last couple years, and you're really seeing it this year especially. The cutback lanes, the following his blocks, just has great vision. My question is, as good as he was, is he enough? And that's probably a loaded question, because is he enough for Northern Kentucky, or is he enough to win a state title? I guess is how you have to qualify that, because when you look at the rest of Northern Kentucky, there's not going to be a lot of defenses that can stop Travis Elliot. He's too big, too fast, and Ryle's offensive line is doing a nice job of opening up some holes. They're not dominant this year, but they're doing a decent enough job. And don't think the Coopers' defense is a slouch. They're not. Travis Elliot is going to do this to a lot of other teams this year. It was not just a Cooper thing. 5 touchdowns may be the norm for Travis Elliot this year. I really don't see a whole lot of defenses stopping him. 6A on down in Northern Kentucky. When they get to the state tournament, state playoffs, it might be a different story. But for right now, I think Travis Elliot has Ryle way up there in Northern Kentucky just because he's that good. Now their quarterback, Nathan Davis, transferred from Grant County, high expectations for him. Looks like a talented kid. Didn't quite look comfortable early in the game. And they're doing a lot of different things, trying to involve Elliott in different ways, trying to use Jake Nutter in different ways, their backup running back and slot receiver type guy. So they're doing some different things, and Nathan might not be completely comfortable with all those things yet. It's definitely a bigger level of football than he's been used to in the past at Grant. I will say this. He got better as the night went on, and he had a touchdown run that was very impressive. Video of that is on the blog, NkySportsBlog.com. Just click on our video link up at the top, and you can see that. It's on highlights from the game. But he's an athletic kid. He's got a nice arm. He wasn't quite on the same page as everybody else just yet on some of those long throws that they attempted. And he also got picked off by Tyler Morris to end the first half. Morris returned it for a touchdown. So, he had that go against him. But other than that, I mean, he was pretty solid. And I think he's got the looks of a nice quarterback. They'll have him for 2 years. He's just a junior. And like I said, a good athlete. He can run the ball well. He's going to be productive in that offense. He did take a huge hit and had to leave the game because of it. But he's going to be fine, according to head coach Bryson Warner. Said he could have come back in the game if they would have needed him. They didn't. Instead, they put Elliott in the Wildcat, and he ran for 2 more touchdowns. Jake Nutter, breakout player watch. I'm going to have an article coming up about him this week. Outside linebacker, running back, slot receiver on offense. Was a force on the defensive side of the football at that outside linebacker position. Constantly in the backfield of the Cooper Jaguars. Had a couple sacks. There's highlights of him up on the blog as well. Had a lot of tackles for losses. He was a madman. He was absolutely everywhere. He's an athletic kid, too. He filled in nice for Elliott in the first quarter when Elliott was out of the game. But Jake Nutter, expect big things out of him. He's got a nonstop motor. He doesn't necessarily pass the eye test. He doesn't strike you as a huge kid or the fastest or biggest necessarily, but I tell you what, he gets the job done. He has a nose for the football, and he just seems to make really quick decisions and reads on the defensive side. Ryan Smith, a wide receiver, showed some promise, had a nice catch on a throw from Davis. Looks like a good athletic kid with some good size, so we'll keep an eye on Ryan Smith as well for Ryle. But that's sort of what they've got. I think for the most part, you're looking at Davis, Elliott, and Nutter as sort of like the triangle offense there for Ryle. And I think the one thing that Bryson Warner is doing a really good job of is being proactive about knowing that they're sort of limited on offense. They don't have a ton of guys, a ton of weapons. So a lot of teams are going to know what they're going to do. He's already moving Elliott around a lot. He's moving Nutter around, getting them in different spots. He's splitting both of them out and letting them play the slot receiver position. I think that's a very good thing, being proactive, just making it tougher to guard their offense and defend against them and account for all these different guys. And it'll be interesting to see what happens when they face some of the better defenses, and when you try to think of who that is. I mean, you've got Highlands. Dixie's defense didn't look so good in the first week, so I don't know if it's an issue with them. Simon Kenton will be a good game. Simon Kenton Ryle, definitely looking forward to that one. But it'll be interesting to see as they go on how that offense gels, and especially Davis. I'd like to see his role increase in that. I think it will. I think he's going to be very productive as the season goes on, and people will really start to know more about him towards middle of the year. Cooper, I mentioned, I was going to tell you why we shouldn't give up on them. It was not as bad as the score looked. And I talked to Coach Randy Borchers about this after the game. They just couldn't prevent Elliott's big plays, which, guess what? Neither will anyone else in Northern Kentucky. No one's going to be able to stop Travis Elliot from having these big plays. And Cooper, when Elliott wasn't breaking off a long run, their defense looked pretty solid. They were sure tacklers. Honestly, they controlled the line of scrimmage through the entire first quarter when Elliott was out of the game. It's tough to say that when he runs for 5 touchdowns, but they really did control it when he was not in the game. They put pressure on Nathan Davis all night long. They were constantly in the backfield. And I got to say this. They have an absolute stud playing the defensive end position that goes by the name of J.P. Williams, and you're going to hear more about him as the season goes on. The kid is an absolute monster. He has college potential. He laid the lick on Davis that unfortunately knocked him out of the game there for the rest of the game. But, as we mentioned, Davis is going to be fine, so no one was hurt. But constantly getting pressure on Davis. He was also very good against the run, sort of clogging up holes, getting in there to make tackles. J.P. Williams, good size, fast off the edge, very good pass rusher. Keep an eye on him. He's going to be a name to remember. Also for Cooper, A.J. Collins and Tyler Morris, 2 very solid running backs who can carry the football for them. Very tough guys, hard to bring down. I think they're going to have very good years, and they're going to be able to keep Cooper's offense in a lot of the games. I like that Borchers is moving Morris away from the quarterback position, so I'm putting him at running back and letting him carry the football because he is their best athlete on the field. He is the focal point of their offense, and he's out there for so many plays. It's nice to free him up. It's almost like when a basketball coach will take his best player, who happens to be his point guard, and move him off the ball to try to free him up and put the ball in his hands a little bit more. It's sort of like what they're doing with Morris. Okay, quit making decisions, quit running for your life. We're just going to set you up in the backfield, hand off to you, and let you do your thing, go straight ahead. And I like that move. I think it's a good decision by Coach Borchers, and I think that's going to help them as things go on. Of course, they've also got A.J. Branch, who's one of the top receivers in Northern Kentucky. Unfortunately, he got hurt towards the end of the first half. He tried to tackle Travis Elliot, went down. He actually did tackle Travis Elliot, but lowered his shoulder and took a shoulder, or a knee or thigh area into his shoulder and dislocated his shoulder. So he sat out the rest of the game. Don't have an update on him. Not sure what his availability will be like from here on out. But I hate to see him go down. When A.J. Branch gets back in the mix, he'll join Collins and Morris as sort of a three-man offense for Cooper, the same way Ryle has theirs. Those three guys are kind of going to stand out to you the most. J.P. Williams, though, also had a carry or two, and also looks like they can split him out, use him as a tight end and throw the ball to him. I think he has a chance to be a stud on the offensive side of the football as well. Again, just a very big kid, good size, looked to have good hands, and he's a good athlete. So keep an eye on J.P. Williams. A.J. Collins and Tyler Morris are the two running backs for Cooper. They're going to be solid. And again, you take Travis Elliott's big plays out of this game, and Cooper didn't get beat that bad up front. They did a nice job holding their own. Their defense looked much improved, stopping the run and putting pressure on the quarterback. I think they're going to be okay, and I think they're going to surprise someone this year. And they may not have the best record in the world, but they're going to sneak up on one of those 6A teams and pop them when they're not supposed to. I definitely think they're ahead of Campbell County, where Campbell County's at right now. So we'll look at that a little bit later. I want to talk about 6A a little farther. Both these teams showed a lot of positives in this game and also showed some negatives. But I'm going to go ahead and say this. Ryle, to me, is without a doubt the best team in 6A now. And I also think they're the second best team in Northern Kentucky behind Highlands. And Travis Elliot might be the best football player in Northern Kentucky. And that's tough to say when you've got all these Division I guys. He's going to Division I as well to Western Kentucky. But you got some of these big-time recruits like Zeke Pike to Auburn and stuff. But I just don't know how anyone is going to be able to affect a high school football game more so than Travis Elliot. He's so dominant on the field and such a force out there. It's going to be tough to do more than he's doing. I tell you what, it was really an incredible experience to watch him run the football like that. Again, if you want to view his highlights, the video is on the blog. Just go up to the top where it says video, click on that. It'll be the first one. It says highlights and the score from the games. Be sure to check that out on NkySportsBlog.com. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the NewCath and Dixie game and the statement that Eddie Eviston's Thoroughbreds made. All that and more as we continue here on the Weekend Audible on NkySportsBlog.com.
There's no place for high school football like the greater Cincinnati area, and nobody covers it like TriStateFootball.com. Enjoy wall-to-wall coverage of 124 teams and 17 conferences from Southwest Ohio, Eastern Indiana, and Northern Kentucky. Get ready for kickoff with previews, great feature articles, and exclusive podcasts. Don't miss the area's best game night coverage, including live updates from over 20 games. Follow Tri-State Football on Twitter and Facebook. It's TriStateFootball.com, where high school football never ends.
We're back here, the Weekend Audible on NkySportsBlog.com. I'm Rick Brewing. Guess what? We're on Facebook. You can be our friend. Well, sort of. You can like us. You can like us on Facebook. Just search NkySportsBlog.com and give us a like. Need to get some of those up, so please visit that page and hit like for us. And also you can get all the great updates that we provide via Facebook. And you can. It's almost like a personal RSS feed right there to your Facebook, to NkySportsBlog.com. So look for that. Getting back to football, I want to talk about the NewCath victory over Dixie, 42-13. Again, that's 2A NewCath beating Dixie, 6A Dixie, 42-13. Brady Hightchew, offensive star of the night, as we expect always with NewCath. 230 yards passing with 3 touchdowns through the air. Tacked on 116 yards running the football and another score. And Brady Hightchew was dominant. Again, he's the best dual-threat quarterback in Northern Kentucky, and he's the most electrifying playmaker in space. He's very elusive, very quick, very impressive as both a runner. And, he doesn't get enough credit for how well he throws the ball. Once again, 230 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air, and most people are just going to talk about his ability to run. He's definitely a dual-threat guy. Had a completion percentage of around 70% last year, so he can get it done with his arm. And with Eddie Eviston calling the offense, the things are going to be just fine for Brady Hightchew. Junior running back Dylan Hayes had 2 touchdowns rushing, and I know they're looking to replace Chris Kelly. Hayes, a guy who's going to get the bulk of those carries, did a good job. Senior Nick Wolterman also looked good, got some carries. They split him out some too. Nick Wolterman, a guy who hasn't had a huge role in the past, but it's definitely going to be expected to sort of be one of those guys that they lean upon this year with his experience and his athleticism. Pete Callipy, another junior that could be a weapon there for their offense. He had a couple nice plays. Most importantly, though, again, they have Eddie Eviston. And Eddie Eviston is already proving himself as a top coach in Northern Kentucky, and he's up there with the best of the best, in my opinion. We're talking like the Dale Muellers of the world. I think Eddie Eviston is in that conversation. He has been very impressive as a short time as the head coach at NewCath. And his relationship with Brady Hightchew and the development that has taken place in Brady Hightchew's game has been off the charts. It's been great for Hightchew as a quarterback, and they've really done a lot of watching film together and studying some of the finer points of the game. And that has made all the difference in the world for Brady Hightchew and him playing the quarterback position. The biggest upset of this game might not have even been these two teams and the way the game played out, but the NC line over Dixie's line on both sides of the ball. If you go back and watch the replay of this game on NkySports.com, just watch the lines. NewCath just blowing Dixie off the ball on every play, it seems like. They're constantly making plays in the backfield and putting pressure on Goose Cohorn, who was filling in for Zeke Pike at quarterback. Again, Zeke Pike makes a big difference. There's no one that's going to deny that. He's the best prospect in Northern Kentucky this year. He's a freak athlete. He's huge. He plays the quarterback position for them, so anytime you're losing your quarterback, it's going to affect you. But there's not an excuse for Dixie to get beat in the way they were getting beat. Zeke Pike couldn't have stopped NewCath's offense single-handedly. And if they weren't going to stop NewCath's offense, they weren't going to win that game. And bottom line is, again, as good as Zeke Pike is, he couldn't have stopped them by themselves. They were doing whatever they wanted, and Eddie Eviston just, was the maestro of the whole thing, and it was perfectly orchestrated by him. And I just, that's really got to be concerning for the Dixie fans, that the offensive and defensive lines just don't look like they're as strong as people thought they were going to be. And conversely, I think NewCath was sandbagging big time on their offensive line. That was my biggest concern, was how that offensive and defensive line was going to hold up. You don't have Chris Kelly, a big physical back in the backfield anymore. You got to rely on some guys who have a little bit more speed and are going to need some holes to run through. Offensive line looked great. They're athletic. They're tough. They move well. They have great feet, and they know what they're doing. And I was just really impressed by NewCath's line. And conversely, a little concerned about Dixie now because of the line play that they got this weekend. Dixie has to regroup quickly. They face CovCath next week, a rivalry game, and a game that I know they want to win, even though it doesn't mean as much as it used to with them being in separate districts now. And then right after that, they play Highlands. So there's not a big opportunity here for Dixie to pick up a bunch of confidence or momentum. They're going to face a CovCath team who looked very good in their opener, a great quarterback in Blake Burr, another good offensive line for CovCath. So it's not going to be easy. Then you go to Highlands, we know what they bring. That's going to be an uphill battle. Dixie's going to have to respond quickly. They've got their quarterback, they've got their leader and Zeke Pike back. Now, how much of a difference that makes, we're going to get to see. And I know it'll make a big one. I'm not trying to downplay the importance of Zeke Pike on that team, because if you take away anyone's best player, it's going to greatly impact the outcome of that game. And I'm not questioning that in any way, shape, or form. But still, the defense we saw from Dixie is concerning. The line play that we saw for Dixie is concerning. And conversely, it looked very good for NewCath. I think NewCath is going to be in great shape this year. And I'll go ahead and say it right now. They're the favorites once again to win a state title in 2A. No question in my mind. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, it's going to be time to switch gears and talk about 6A as we continue. We've already talked about Ryle and Dixie. We want to talk a little bit more about the rest of the 6A and why that is going to be the most exciting district this year. You're listening to the Weekend Audible on NKSportsBlog.com.
RentItToday.com is the ultimate rental resource. Find your next vacation destination, a house to rent, electronics, tools. You can easily plan an unforgettable party by renting inflatables, tents, and much more. Do you need to rent medical equipment? They have that too. Or are you a rental company looking for better ways to improve your sales? Let the tri-state area know you have something for rent. Visit RentItToday.com. Renting has never been this simple. RentItToday.com, the ultimate rental resource.
The Weekend Audible, NkySportsBlog.com. I'm your host, Rick Broering, and we are looking for sponsors. That's right. You can sponsor this podcast, hear your commercial in that break that we just had. We can have audio commercials. We can do live reads on the air, whatever you want. We also have a blog, NkySportsBlog.com. You can sponsor that, the title sponsor for the blog. We have a scoreboard. You can sponsor the NKSB scoreboard every Friday and Saturday night. Lots of sponsorship opportunities. Emails, NkySportsBlog@gmail.com if you're interested in getting involved and want to support Northern Kentucky high school football coverage. Right now, though, we've talked about Dixie. We've talked about Ryle. We're going to stay in 6A and talk about it as a whole. And why I think that 6A is the toughest district in Northern Kentucky to predict and the most exciting to watch this season as it unfolds. And I think when you look at the district, everyone in this district has bright spots. But no one is without question marks. Dixie lost 42-13 to open things up. I had them ranked first. Ryle won 41-17 over Cooper in their opener, with them ranked second. Simon Kent, our third-place team, beat Casey County 34-9. Brennan Kuntz, their new quarterback, 10 for 20, 139 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. Did throw an interception. Jared Swanson, his favorite target on the night, had 6 catches for 115 yards and 2 touchdowns. Nate Powell making his debut at the running back position. He had 7 carries for 61 yards, a nice average there, and a touchdown. Trey Pinkleton, who we thought we might see a little bit at quarterback, and they still will put him back there some, I believe. But mostly, he's going to be a slot guy, just an overall athlete, a guy that they may put in the backfield and give him some carries. He had 3 catches, 25 yards, and a score. And Jared Bowling at the linebacker position was a stud. 19 tackles in Week 0 action as SK knocked off Casey County. Average 3A team, a solid 3A team. They usually have a winning record. 34-9, the final score there. And Campbell County lost 42-2 to Covington Catholic. And Stephen Lickert, the new coach out there, I know he's going to do a great job. He's great at rebuilding programs, but he has a lot of work to do there at Campbell County. They're just not quite there yet. Boone County, though, might be the dark horse in all this. 120-6 in their opener over Southwest Pulaski. Cameron Schwartz, the quarterback, 6 of 12, 147 yards through the air with 2 touchdowns. Good start for him. I know Bryson Thompson was the leading rusher in the game. So Boone with a good start to their season. Let's run through the teams again. Dixie, not quite where we thought they were. Their line got pushed around, and a lot of people's lofty expectations, if you think about it, also included Deshaun Peterson being in that mix. So now when Zeke Pike comes back, if you had Deshaun Peterson in that mix, it's like, wow, look at all these weapons. As it stands, they have a great receiver in Goose Cohorn. They have a good running back in Seth Bruns, who we didn't even talk about, who scored the only touchdown for Dixie on a 99-yard kickoff return. And again, he's a guy who's always capable of the big play. Cohorn capable of the big play. So you move those guys out because you put Pike back into the quarterback position, so Cohorn doesn't have to be your quarterback. And you definitely get a lot more playmaking ability at the skill positions there with Pike on your team. But you still have to be a little bit concerned, again, about the play of the line. And like I said, I think people's expectations might have been a little overblown when you think that you're bringing the most talented receiver in all of Northern Kentucky into the mix as well. Ryle, they're being proactive at the moment to find creative ways to use Elliott and get a few other guys involved into their offense. The question with them is, will they need more? Travis Elliott's obviously very dominant. What happens if someone is able to stop him, though? What's plan B? What's the backup plan? Can anyone stop Travis Elliot? We say, in Northern Kentucky, that may be tough. I don't know if there's a defense who can do it. We'll find out as the year goes on. I like the fact, though, that Bryson Warner is being proactive, like I mentioned, and trying to find different ways. Travis Elliott was in the slot. He was going out on long pass routes at times. They're going to find ways to move him around and get him the ball. They're going to try to get Jake Nutter involved, things like that, and use him in different ways. I think you'll see Ryan Smith more as the season goes on and Davis gets more comfortable back there. Do they have enough? That's the question right now for Ryle. SK, they had a nice win. It's tough to gauge Casey County and where they would stack up with the rest of Northern Kentucky. Tough to know how much that win means. They have enough athletes and weapons, it would seem. It seems like they might be the deepest as far as just good, pure athletes. But they're replacing a lot. You're losing Chad Lawrence. You're losing a lot of those linebackers and defensive guys that made you go last year. Obviously, Trey Pingleton is a stud athlete. Swanson looks like he's going to be a good receiver. Powell's a solid running back with some potential. It'll be interesting to see how he develops. But again, a lot of question marks for SK, and we'll see how much depth they have and how much talent they actually have as the season winds on. There's still question marks there because, again, how good is Casey County? But you got to be happy with what you saw from them in their first game. A 34-9 win you'll take any time to open the season. So they're looking good as of now. Campbell County, not ready, like we said. Lickert is good. He's going to do a good job, but they're just not ready yet. Their line is not ready. They don't have much of a run game to speak of. It'll be interesting to see if they can get that spread offense working and get the passing game going. They have some talent. Tyler Durham is a monster. I think they're going to use him in the backfield. I know he's not playing quarterback as much. They're going to use him probably in a lot of ways, like we've talked about some of these other teams, moving guys around, putting them in the backfield, putting them out at the slot, putting them at tight end in Durham's case with his size. And he's going to be effective for them. They'll have to be creative and find ways to put the ball in his hands because he is the best player on the offensive side of the ball for them. But they're going to take their lumps this year. They've got a long way to go. It's going to be a rebuilding process out there for Coach Lickert. Boone, like I said, they're the wild card in all this. They have some experience, guys that have played at the varsity level for a couple years now. They have some solid young athletes that I don't think a lot of people know about that we may even surface. We may see more of them surface as the season goes on. I think that, again, how does Southwestern Pulaski match up with the rest of Northern Kentucky 6A? We don't know. But I think when you look at what they were able to do, come back from that deficit and come back and get the 28-6 win, all their touchdowns in the second half. Cameron Schwartz looks good at the quarterback position. Thompson, a nice athlete in the backfield. They've got some young athletes that are going to come and help them as the season goes on. I think they're a team that's going to get some respect back in Northern Kentucky this year, and I think they're going to be in the mix. To what extent, we don't know just yet, but I think they're going to be more competitive than they've been. So I know what you're thinking right now. Okay, well how's it going to shake out now? Because you're talking about everyone has bright spots, everyone has holes. So who's going to rise to the top? I think you look for Ryle and Simon Kenton sort of surface at the top, and their meeting between those two is probably for the 6A district title. Who's better right now? You don't know. It's too early. But I think those two are at the top. And for two different reasons. With Simon Kenton, I think it's because they've got a lot of pretty good athletes. They've got 5-6 guys that are good athletes that can be weapons on the offensive side of the ball, good defensive players. With Ryle, it's the exact opposite. They've got one really, really good athlete, the best athlete possibly in Northern Kentucky, and Travis Elliot. So I think both of them, again, are going to be at the top, maybe for different reasons, but they're going to be at the top. Dixie and Boone, I think, battle it out for that third and fourth spot. And I think both those teams are a noticeable step behind Simon Kenton and Ryle. though I guess it still remains to be seen. We still got some time. Don't write off Dixie yet from what I was saying earlier. They still have a lot of talent. I just think there are some issues there, and I'm anxious to see how that plays out. So Dixie and Boone probably battling out for that third and fourth. And with Campbell County, as we mentioned, just not quite there yet. They're a step behind. So again, keep an eye on this 6A picture. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out for the rest of the year. It's going to be the most exciting in Northern Kentucky, and I think you definitely look at that SK Ryle game as a huge game. The Dixie Boone game is a huge game. And also just looking at how Boone progresses, Boone could sneak up and pop any one of those top 3 teams potentially. And obviously, they do something like that, it definitely throws a wrench into things for the 6A playoff picture. It's going to be really interesting as that 5th place team will go down and play with another district when the state playoffs come around. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, it's going to be time to talk a little 4A football. Highlands and CovCath, both big winners in Week 0. What's it mean? And is the rivalry back? All that and more as we continue. It's the Weekend Audible here on NkySportsBlog.com.
QueenCityHigh.com is Cincinnati's premier high school sports website and a member of the Rivals.com network, the nation's most trusted recruiting service. Follow the best teams and players in the tri-state area and talk smack in the free message board, the 275 Loop. Sign up today for a free 30-day trial. Just use the promo code QCH30 and gain access to exclusive recruiting news, player videos, and feature articles. Don't get left on the sidelines. Get into the game now by visiting QueenCityHigh.com, the Tri-State's Rivals.com high school sports website.
I'm on NkySportsBlog.com, but I'm also writing for TriStateFootball.com. You can check my work out there. Just type in URL, TriStateFootball.com. It's where high school football never ends. Some great coverage over there. Be sure to check out my writing as well as all the other reporters on TriStateFootball.com. They cover 131 teams, I believe, in Ohio, Indiana, and Northern Kentucky. So be sure to visit TriStateFootball.com. Also, check out all our videos, NkySportsBlog.com. We're doing a lot more video features. Just, again, visit NkySportsBlog.com. Click the video tab up at the top of the website, and that'll bring you to all of our videos and our video page. Now, it's time to talk a little bit of 4A football. Starting with the Bluebirds of Highlands. They went down to face the defending 4A state champions in Boyle County, winners of 30 straight games, and the Bluebirds put an end to that as they knocked them off. And the Birds just wore Boyle down. Towles has again made strides this offseason. We saw a big jump from his sophomore to his junior year, and now we see it again with his junior to his senior year. He looked really good in the 2-minute drill. He hooked up with Sheehan a few times, and we know those two are going to be good for the entire season. 5 catches for Sheehan, 108 yards. Towles rushed for 79 yards and 3 scores. He was 11 of 24 passing for 201 yards and a touchdown. And again, made some big-time throws. I know there were some, now that he's committed to UK, you got some of those crazy recruiting analyst guys following him around and reporting his stats. They were impressed with what they saw. The UK faithful is excited to be getting Pat Towles, and with good reason. He looked very good in the opener against a good Boyle County team. And Donovan McCoy, another guy we're going to have to keep an eye on for the Bluebirds. He's a junior and just an athlete. He played quarterback coming up as a freshman and at the JV level. But, now they got to get him on the field with Towles. He had 2 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown. He's a guy, again, you put him in the slot, you put him in the backfield, you put him wherever, and he's just going to be able to make plays because of his athleticism. Keep an eye on Donovan McCoy. Carter New. We know a lot about Drake Bruns, committed to the University of Cincinnati, a big-time defensive back prospect, was really good last year. But Carter New, a defensive star in his own right, had a big year last year, started off the season with a bang against Boyle County, 2 interceptions in the Week 0 contest. Also had a touchdown return off of one of those INTs. 86 yards he took it to pay dirt. Got the touchdown, and again, the Birds knock off Boyle County and end their 30-game win streak. And this was, I guess, sort of what we expected. Again, if you look at what I said, it's a big game. It's a tough game for Highlands, but it's a game they're going to win. Dale Mueller is going to have his guys ready. He's not going to be having them take it lightly. It's the first game of the season, and in Fort Thomas, you know that's all those people have been waiting for, so the guys are going to be amped up. And Pat Towles, quite honestly, loves the big moment, loves the spotlight, and loves playing against good competition. He, won a state championship as a sophomore. Granted, he handed the ball off to Austin Collinsworth most of the time, but the kid is capable of making big plays. He's never rattled. It's really fun to watch. I didn't expect that game to be much of a problem for him. It was tight early. Bluebirds pulled it away. Like I mentioned, they wore Boyle down, and that's the problem with a lot of teams that face Highlands is they're completely a two-platoon system. They've got a separate offense and a separate defense, and those guys don't go both ways. So they're a lot more well-rested than a lot of these teams are in Northern Kentucky when it comes to the second half of the game, and especially the fourth quarter. Looking at Covington Catholic, Blake Burr led the Colonels to a 42-2 victory over Campbell County. Burr, 14 of 20, 232 yards, 4 touchdowns. Most impressive part about Blake Burr's performance, the way he spread the ball around. Charlie Mater, 3 catches for 72 yards, 2 touchdowns. Mitch McDowell, 2 catches, 47 yards, 1 touchdown. Clint Massey, 2 catches, 43 yards, and a touchdown. And there were more. And this year there is no Alex Connolly for him to throw to. Alex Connolly, of course, standout receiver for Covington Catholic a year ago. He may not be there, but they've got enough weapons. Michael Best, another guy who's going to be involved on that offensive side as a receiver for Burr. And also Sam Dressman, the sophomore, is stud athlete. I saw he got a touchdown rushing in the fourth quarter of that game. But don't be surprised to see them use him at tight end and other things like that. Put the ball in his hands. He's a big kid. He can run, run over you, run by you type of guy. They're going to find ways to get him involved on the offense, and Burr's going to use him as a weapon. Blake Burr might be the best pocket passer in Northern Kentucky after Towles. He sees the field well. He understands the offense and what the defense is doing coverage-wise. He makes good reads, makes good decisions with the football, and he's got plenty of arm to get it there. And again, he just throws a real nice tight spiral, puts it in there, and with all these options, he has a receiver that may not be stud guys like Connolly were, but certainly capable receivers. He's going to have a big year picking defenses apart, and that's exactly what he did to Campbell County. The offensive line also looking good for the Colonels. The run game and the receivers are looking good. Of course, Gabe Gray, the running back there, getting it done for the Colonels. Burr is great. My question still is this. How good is the defense? And how well will they stop the run? That was a big problem for them last year. And if you want to compete with these other teams, you want to compete with the Highlands, you want to compete with a Ryle, so to speak, you got to be able to stop the run. And against Campbell County, I just don't know that they were really tested in that aspect. Campbell County hasn't had much of a run game for the past several years, and just because Stephen Lickert's there doesn't mean they all of a sudden can just automatically turn that on. So it'll be interesting to see if what Covington Catholic's defense does and what their defensive line does, especially up front, against some of the better rushing teams as the season goes on. But, you can't blame them for what they did. Held them to 2 points, didn't let them score. It was definitely a very good outing for the CovCath defense. But again, they weren't quite tested yet. I still want to see them. I still have my doubts. And that's going to be the question. I've said that all along. That's going to be the question for this CovCath team is how good is that defense, and can they stop the run better than they have in years past? So that brings us to the question. Is the rivalry back? Right now, I'd say we still need more info. And it's what we just talked about. Covington Catholic, how good is their defense? Can they slow down that Highlands offense attack and Pat Towles? And I think maybe the biggest thing is, can they stop Pat Towles, Jake True, and Zach Harris from running the football all over him? Pat Towles especially. Pat Towles is the tough one because he drops back to pass looking like he's going to throw, and then he takes off and burns you for 14, 16 yards at a time on these runs. Again, he rushed for 79 yards, but 3 touchdowns in the game against Boyle County. And that's where he'll get you. He's big, he's physical, and he runs better than you would think. That's going to be the tough thing for CovCath to stop. So like I said, we need more information and know whether Covington Catholic is really going to be able to compete this year. They kept it close last year, but you got to remember this year, Covington Catholic doesn't have the luxury of sneaking up on teams. Last year, Highlands might have been overlooking that game a little bit. I know it's still CovCath, but you've got to think that there was something that went a little flukish in that game last year. This year, Highlands is going to be ready. They're going to be looking for revenge because last year they felt like it was a loss when they had that close game with the Colonels. They took some heat for it, I know, or at least they felt that way. I'd be expecting them to be ready to go, ready for that CovCath game this year. It's still a rivalry to these kids. They still want to beat each other. But from the fans' perspective, is the rivalry back? We'll see. We'll see. And I'm anxious to see how CovCath develops because I want it to be back. I want it to be back for your guys' sake. I love hearing you guys trash talk each other about it. I just don't know that it's quite there, but it's definitely moving in the right direction. Coach Dave Worth has done a great job of restoring the CovCath program. And they're a team that could be very dangerous in the playoffs because, again, they have those weapons and they have a great quarterback who makes good decisions in Blake Burr. We'll see how they continue to develop. But that Highlands CovCath game, definitely one to circle this year. It's going to be more interesting. When I come back, it's going to be time to break down the NKSB scoreboard, make a quick run through it, and sign off here as we continue on the Weekend Audible. You're listening to NkySportsBlog.com.
There's no place for high school football like the greater Cincinnati area, and nobody covers it like TriStateFootball.com. Enjoy wall-to-wall coverage of 124 teams and 17 conferences from Southwest Ohio, Eastern Indiana, and Northern Kentucky. Get ready for kickoff with previews, great feature articles, and exclusive podcasts. Don't miss the area's best game night coverage, including live updates from over 20 games. Follow Tri-State Football on Twitter and Facebook. It's TriStateFootball.com, where high school football never ends.
And we're back, the Weekend Audible here on NkySportsBlog.com. I'm Rick Broering. It's time for our final segment, the same final segment we'll have every week in the show. It's time to take a trip to the NKSB scoreboard and take a look at all the scores from around Northern Kentucky in Week 0 action. Again, remember that not every team played in Week 0. Week 0 is just the first week that you're allowed to schedule games. Why it's Week 0 and not Week 1. We don't know, but this allows teams to have the bye week. So, some teams just don't play Week 0 and they play 10 straight weeks, and then some teams play in Week 0 and then have a bye week later on in the season. So if you don't hear your team's name, remember that they might not have played this week. And again, I wasn't kidding about sponsorship opportunities. The NKSB scoreboard would be a great opportunity to sponsor if you want to support Northern Kentucky high school football coverage, because let me tell you, it's not easy to get by and do this stuff, and it's not cheap. There's a lot of equipment that goes involved in it and a lot of time that goes into this, but we appreciate you listening, and if you're interested in sponsoring the NKSB scoreboard or anything else on the site, be sure to hit us up, NkySportsBlog@gmail.com. Without further ado, let's get into it. Again, some of these scores you've already heard, but we'll run them down, all of them. Boone County, 28. Pulaski Southwestern, just 6. Big win for the Rebels. Frankfort, Newport, a Saturday night game. It was Frankfort 14, Newport 8. The Wildcats dropped their opener, and Coach Nick Rice has that team headed in the right direction. Frankfort with a couple of really nice playmakers on the offense side of football. So a good outing for the Newport Wildcats defense. Got to get the offense on track. I have no doubt that they'll do so. Highlands 35, Boyle County 14. We just talked about that game. Simon Kenton 34, Casey County 9. A nice opening win for the Pioneers. Holy Cross 65, Dayton 13. The Indians rolling in that first game. I know Jalen Beal had 4 touchdowns. Backup quarterback Travis Gabbard looked good in relief of Kyle Fuller after the Indians got up to a big lead. And I know Coach Kozerski made comments on the news afterwards that he didn't want the score to get to where it got. But, it's the first game of the season, and anyone complaining about this really just needs to get a life, because it's the first game of the season. You're trying to get guys playing time. You're trying to see what guys can do. And kids want to prove themselves. If you're a second-string guy, you're a JV guy, and you get in a varsity game the first week, you're proving yourself. You're trying to score points. Holy Cross 65, Dayton 13. Nothing wrong with it, Indians. Do your thing. Bellevue 21, Walton Verona 0. A big win for the Tigers out of the gate. And pretty interesting. New coach, new system, yet Jake Sparks, the quarterback for the Tigers, has them rolling right away. Walton Verona It's impressive that Bellevue was able to blank them. Walton Verona has one of the best run games in Northern Kentucky small school football returning. So, again, a 21 win for the Bellevue Tigers. A nice win there. Gallatin County 39, Ludlow 12. The Panthers in Ludlow in for a rough year. They lost their quarterback, Burt Pouncey. He transferred to Holy Cross. And they've got, a couple guys. Mitchell Cody, a youngster who's got a lot of talent, but just not enough pieces down there in Ludlow this year. It's going to be a rough season for the Panthers. Ryle, again, we've talked about their 41-17 win over Cooper. NewCath popped Dixie 42-13 that we've already talked about. Covington Catholic 42-2 over Campbell County. And Owen County were winners over Lloyd 28-13. That does it for the NKSB scoreboard, and it also does it for this edition of the Weekend Audible. We really appreciate you tuning in. As I mentioned, if you are sort of skipping through here and you didn't hear the intro, this podcast is a podcast for now. We want to do it as a live radio show, whether that be internet radio show or in a studio, again, remains to be seen. It also remains to be seen when we go live and when we start taking your calls live on the show. Definitely something I want to do. But remember, you can tweet at us. Find us at NkySportsBlog, or you can also send us an email, NkySportsBlog@gmail.com. I'll be more than happy to read your questions online. Of course, you can always comment on the site. Lots of sponsorship opportunities available on the site as well. So go ahead and check that out. Just visit NkySportsBlog.com. Appreciate you tuning in. Until next week, be sure to visit NkySportsBlog.com. Number one in high school coverage. We'll have all types of new content going up throughout the week, so be sure to tune into that. You've been listening to the Weekend Audible on NkySportsBlog.com.